How about now? Can you hear me now? Do I have sound? Okay, very good. Let's get ready to get started. We'll do our introduction chanting. Welcome, Bisaka. Hello, Christian. Welcome. Hello, Dhamma learner. Welcome. Dharma learner. No worries. If you really want to, you could always catch it after it's live. That's the way life goes sometimes. Hello, Ian. Welcome. All right, friends, let's get started. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Handamayang aniccanusati patang banamase. Sabbe sankara anicca, sabbe sankara dukkha, sabbe dhamma anatta aduvang jivatang duvang maranang. Avasang maya maritabang marana pariyosanang. Me jivatang jivatang me aniyatang maranang me aniyatang. Vata ayang kayo achirang peta vinyano chuddo. Adhisesati pattaving kalingarang iva niratang anichavata sankara upada vayadamino upajitva nirojanti te sangvu pusumosoko. All conditioned things are impermanent. All conditioned things are dukkha. Everything is void of self. Life is not certain. Death is certain. It is inevitable that I'll die. Death is the culmination of my life. My life is uncertain, my death is certain. Indeed, this body will soon be void of consciousness and cast away. It will lie on the ground like a rotten log, completely void of use. Truly conditioned things cannot last. Their nature is to rise and fall. Having arisen, they then must cease. Their stilling is true happiness. All right, friends, welcome. It is Monday night. That means it is time for another Dhammapalooza, the festival of Dhamma with the Maggasekha community, where we do a variety of different Dhamma-related activities. We always start out with some chanting, and we usually, towards the end, we do some meditation together. But what happens between now and then is, as always, guided by the community. Each Dhammapalooza, we don't know how it's going to go because I only put the name and the date. It could be that there's lots of questions and we do a big Q&A. It could be there's no questions and we read suttas, or we do a sutta roulette or a word roulette. There's a wide variety of different things we can do. So for the next few minutes in the chat, I'll leave it open. If anybody has any questions you'd like me to answer, you can put those in the chat. If you have any topics you'd like me to give a talk on, you can put those in the chat. If you have any topics that you'd want the community to discuss, you can put those in the chat. So continue. So we'll check the chat for the next couple minutes, see if anything comes up. And if nothing comes up, well, there's always a sutta in the back pocket. Rick, we can definitely talk about that. I just gave a talk about that in on Insight Timer last week. We're going through the Noble Eightfold Path, one part of the path a week for 8 weeks. Hello, Shay. Good to see you. Good to have you with us. Risaka asked to learn more about forgiveness. Hello, Jayantha. Welcome. All right, so let's get started with Rick's request. Hello, Yankee. Welcome. Could we have a talk on right intention and how to apply right intention to meditation and to daily life? Or can we? This is actually not that hard. I mean, the Buddha literally gave us a technique to practice it. You can find it in Majjhima Nikaya number 19. Right? 2 kinds of thought. As a matter of fact, why don't we just bring up the sutta? It's not that long of a sutta. Let's see here. It's in the chapter on the lion's roar. This is a sutta you need to study to understand how to practice Sammasankappo in your daily life. Well, and technically also the next one too, because it does play a role. It's 20. So let's read this. Like I said, it's not too long. But this is when I first read this sutta many, many years ago now. I don't know how many years, 16, 17 years ago. I immediately thought, wow, I can put this into practice right away. And I did. And it's a great way of doing things. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove and Natapindika's monastery, or park. There, he addressed the bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, Venerable Sir, they replied. The Blessed One said this. Bhikkhus, before my enlightenment, while I was still an unenlightened bodhisattva. And so this is also one of those rare things where you get a glimpse of the Buddha before he was awakened doing the practice. Right? That's a rare thing in the suttas. While I was still only an unenlightened bodhisattva, it occurred to me, suppose that I divide my thoughts into 2 classes, and those 2 classes are Sammasankappo and Miccasankappo. Right intention or thought and wrong intention or thought. You'll see. Then I set on one side thoughts of sensual desire, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of cruelty. That's Miccasankappo, wrong intention. And I said on the other side, thoughts of renunciation, nekama, thoughts of non-ill will, avyapada, and thoughts of non-cruelty, avihingsa. So this is the Buddha giving a technique that is directly training Sammasankappo. You don't have to do anything fancy. It doesn't even have to be in fancy meditation. Don't even have to sit down in a secluded place and put your legs crosswise. Because technically, you could literally do this from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed. You could spend literally the whole day doing this practice as things are arising in your mind. This is a very active practice. It doesn't disappear. So, actively discriminating between skillful and unskillful, beneficial and unbeneficial. Clearly designating and investigating in your mind. When a thought arises, you are judging it. So, as I abide thus, diligent, ardent, and resolute, a thought of sensual desire arose in me. I understood. This thought of sensual desire has arisen in me. That's the first thing you understand. A second is, this leads to my own affliction, to others' affliction, and to the affliction of both. That's the third thing. It obstructs wisdom, causes difficulties, and leads away from Nibbana. When I consider this leads to my own affliction, it subsided in me. When I considered this leads to others' affliction, it subsided in me. When I considered this leads to the affliction of both, it subsided in me. When I considered this obstruction obstructs wisdom, causes difficulty, and leads away from Nibbana, it subsides in me. So this is very specific wording. Notice that all the Buddha is doing is noticing, seeing, understanding, and it is subsiding. 9 times out of 10, this is all you have to do while you're investigating your mind. You just have to notice it. It's just like in the Therigatha, or you see in the suttas where the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis are secluded and practicing, and Mara comes up and tries to trick them and tempt them, and they say, "Who is this?" And they say, "Ah, I see you, Mara." And then Mara goes away dejected. That's exactly what happens most of the time when you observe unskillfulness in your mind. It goes away dejected. It doesn't go away permanently. 2 minutes later, it might come in from another flank. It might attack you in a different way. But it does go away. For those that don't go away, that's what Majjhima Nikaya number 20 is about. Removal of distracting thoughts. But almost always, for the most part, 9 out of 10 times, just recognizing the unskillful thoughts will go away, at least temporarily. Whenever a thought of sensual desire arose in me, I abandoned it, removed it, did away with it. Now, this is also important to understand. This is not a forcible removal. You're not like acting on a force of will and trying to push it out of your mind. You are abandoning. What does it mean by abandoning? You're letting go. You're not giving it any energy, any effort. You're not attached to it. You're letting it be. And it goes away. As I abide thus diligent, ardent, and resolute, a thought of ill will arose me, a thought of cruelty arose in me. I understood this thought has arisen in me. It leads to my own affliction, to others' affliction, or to the affliction of both. It obstructs wisdom, causes difficulties, and leads away from nibbana. When I considered thus, it subsided in me. Whenever a thought of cruelty arose in me, I abandoned it, removed it, did away with it. Bhikkhus, whatever a bhikkhu frequently thinks and ponders upon, that will become the inclination of his mind. Maybe you're like around my age and you saw this kind of thing in the in your classrooms growing up, when it says, be careful what you put in your mind. Whatever you think about will become, your mind will become. This is the Buddha telling us this 2,600 years ago. If you continue to keep engaging in the sensual pleasures and miccha sankalpa, well, then that will be the inclination. That will be what your mind will incline towards. So this is dependent origination. This is the understanding that, well, if I want the results of samma sankappo, I need to set the causes and conditions, to set the groundwork for samma sankappo to arise. Just as with the arising of contact comes the arising of feeling, with the arising of feeling comes the arising of craving, with the arising of craving comes the arising of clinging. With the arising of this comes the arising of that, comes the arising of samma sankappo. So this is the Buddha telling us, well, this is what you need to be mindful of, to reflect on. If he frequently thinks and ponders upon thoughts of sensual desire, he has abandoned thought of renunciation to cultivate the thought of sensual desire. So you can't really do both at the same time. And then his mind inclines to thoughts of sensual desire. If he frequently thinks and ponders upon thoughts of ill will, upon thoughts of cruelty, he abandons thoughts of non-cruelty and non-ill will. And that is what the mind inclines to. Just as in the last month of the rainy season, in the autumn, when the crop thickens, a cowherd would guard his cows by constantly tapping and poking them on the side, that with a stick to check and curb them. Why is that? Because he sees that he could be flogged, imprisoned, fined, or blamed if he let them stray into the crops. So too, I saw in unwholesome states of danger. I saw in unwholesome states danger, degradation, defilement, and in wholesome states the blessing of renunciation, the aspect of cleansing. As I abided thus, diligent, ardent, and resolute, a thought of renunciation arose in me. I understood this. This thought of renunciation has arisen in me. It does not lead to my own affliction or to the affliction of others, or to the affliction of both. It aids wisdom, does not cause difficulties, and leads to nibbana. If I think and ponder upon this thought, even for a night, even for a day, even for a night and a day, I see nothing to fear from it. That's an important thing to understand. The Buddha is reflecting on, this thought, this is a skillful thought. I don't have to do anything. There's nothing to fear from this. I can let it, the skillful thought will also, it's impermanent. It will also arise and cease due to causes and conditions. But it's much more beneficial for yourself and others in the long term to build up skillful thought. All right. So, as you're going about your day, if you develop this practice of being mindful of what is arising in your mind, observing and discriminating if it's skillful or unskillful, and then abandoning, letting go of what's unskillful, developing the skillful. That's not only Samma Sankappo, that's some, why am I blanking out of Vayamo? The right effort. Right? The effort is to abandon the unskillful, develop the skillful. So take this sutta, read it many times, know it well, and put it into practice. And then you can see in any activity, in any experience, you can observe right and wrong intention and build and develop right intention. Janshith says, Bante, do you get dana from Kalyanamitas? I get enough. I mean, I'm not very expensive. I get enough to cover the expenses that I have. I have a decent amount of yearly expenses for all the technical things, the websites and all that kind of stuff. Um, you know, Minor things if I need anything. There's enough of Amazon gift card or whatever. So I'm pretty good. Um, so yeah, I'm not destitute. And wherever I'm staying, that's my daily food and requisites. So yeah, I can't complain. Now we're quite far away from having enough support to, like, say, have a little vihara. That's like Maggasekha vihara. Hopefully, maybe 3 years. Maybe we have enough support then that we can have a little place in Colorado. People can come, that kind of stuff. Um, we'll see. Right now, I have enough support for me as a nomad monk. As I like to say, nomad monks are cheap dates. It doesn't cost much to have me stay at your place. Just a meal and some allowables a day. Yeah, and a room. That's about it. Of course, you can come visit one day, Jonathan. Everybody can come visit. Probably not at the same time. I wouldn't have room for all for everybody at the same time. But yeah. Let's see. All right. Visakha is asking about forgiveness. Specifically, how many times we should forgive somebody. Well, there's some there's some nuance to this. If somebody keeps harming you and you keep forgiving them forever, and they keep harming you, then it's not good. You have to. Did we just have a little stop, like a little lag? Okay. I just saw my on my screen, I just saw me freeze. So So forgiveness. Forgiveness is a mental state, right? Forgiveness is a letting go. That's really what forgiveness is. It can or it cannot have anything to do with anybody else. You could not forgive somebody and they could, be dead like 20 years and you still can't forgive them. What is that doing for you? Not much. Nothing skillful. Nothing good. One could argue, well, it reminds you so that you don't go to that experience in the future. And it's not really a valid point because, well, you can learn your lesson and still let go. You can still be like, well, okay, I learned a good lesson from this. But holding on and not forgiving is not going to help me. I'm practicing letting go of things. So let me let this go. But as we know from the simile, the sutta where the Buddha is given a gift from the Brahmin, and Buddha says, "Take the gift back. I don't accept it." That doesn't mean that you kind of allow people to just continue to harm you. Right? There's things you maybe need to do, to defend yourself, these kind of things, or set boundaries or whatever. But even still, you can forgive. This is why, in the real world, we have these rare examples, right? Of like, somebody is killed and the mother forgives the person who killed them. That doesn't mean that the person doesn't go to jail for the rest of their life or whatever. They still do. But, like the mother, like in court, will like forgive the person or something like that. And that's such an impactful thing because we know that's so rare. And we don't even think we would actually do something like that. So that we must think that, there's something kind of either weird or off or special or amazing about this person, that they're really able to forgive somebody who took something so dear from them. But it is possible. So forgiving doesn't necessarily need to be condoning. Right? Forgiving is a letting go in your own mind. Letting go of agitation, aversion, thoughts of how things should be. That's what forgiveness really is. How the other person acts, how the other person responds, if they even ever know about it, doesn't matter. I mean, it does, but really in the long run, it's the most important thing that matters is the mind, right? And letting go. So, it's kind of like that old saying, right? Forgive but not forget. What that means is, I'm forgiving you, but I'm going to be much more wary of you if you're going to cause me any suffering or any harm. I'm not going to forget that you harmed me, but I am going to forgive you and let go and try to move forward. So there's a balance there. There's a nuance there. especially if you're like, your forgiveness is just enabling bad behavior of other people. That's not good. The Buddha is quite clear that you should call out bad behavior. Right? You shouldn't kind of accept it or condone it. Now, of course, there are, you should be also being mindful of your own hypocrisies and your own, and your own intentions why you're doing it. But it still doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Ajahn Brahm says one more time than 70 times 70. I think I vaguely remember that from many years ago. Now, Christian comes in with a very complicated. I don't even know if I can answer this question, to be honest with you. I don't know how clear of an answer you'd get from you. Maybe you'd have to go to like a Bhante Analio or a Bhante G. Maybe they can give a more detailed understanding. Can you please explain consciousness without landing? I'm going to maybe check out this sutta just to kind of get the context for it. I'll just try to see the Pali word. Because I don't think this is a very common thing. All right. So let's see, we have Upaya Sutta. I'm looking on. Let's see, that's 2253. Let's try to see it in the Sutta Central so we can get the Pali. SN 2253. So we'll share the screen. So the introductory, the little summary for this says, consciousness stands dependent on the four other aggregates, which makes sense. And this attachment is what fuels the cycle of rebirth. Let's go to the Mendicants. If you're involved, you're not free. If you're not involved, you're free. As long as consciousness remains, it would remain involved with form, supported by form, founded on form, and with a sprinkle of relishing. It would grow, increase, and mature. Or consciousness would remain involved with feeling or with perception, or as long as consciousness remains, it would remain involved with choices, sankharas, supported by choices, grounded on choices, and with a sprinkling of relishing, it would grow, increase, and mature. Mendicants, suppose you say, apart from form, apart from feeling, perception, and choices, I will describe the coming and going of consciousness, its passing away and reappearing, its growth, increase, and maturity. That is not possible. If a mendicant has given up greed for the form element, the support is cut off. There's no foundation for consciousness. If a mendicant has given up greed for the feeling element, perception, choices, and consciousness element, the support is cut off and there is no foundation for consciousness. Since that consciousness does not become established and does not grow with no power to regenerate, it is freed. Being free, it's stable. Being stable, it's content. Being content, they're not anxious. Not being anxious, they personally become extinguished. I want to see Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation of that, because I think people can get wrong. I think people can get wrong understandings from that translation. Bhikkhu Bodhi says, when that consciousness is unestablished, not coming to growth, non-regenerative, it is liberated. By being liberated, it is steady. By being steady, it is content. By being content, he is not agitated. Being unagitated personally attains nibbana. That is a really, really interesting, because it seems in some ways to conflict with the beginning that says, apart from connection with the other aggregates, you can't say anything about consciousness. So I think there's some room for people to have confusion there. That's kind of dangerous. Let me double check, because if there is a Pali for no landing of consciousness, I'd like to. I think there might be some complications in terms of the translation. This is an interesting, while I'm Google searching, trying to find the Pali word for this, it's, it seems like Thanissaro, Ajahn Jeff translates this way, but other people don't think that that's a good translation. I don't know. Well, this is something that I would probably need to spend a couple hours investigating. So let's see. I think the Pali here, as far as I can tell, is anidasana. So, anidasana, let me see if I can, no, I can't share that screen, can I? It means attributeless, non-manifesting, signless, featureless, invisible, an epithet for nibbana. So, my mind is clicking on two things: non-manifesting and epithet for nibbana. This is where this can be so confusing for people. Non-manifesting makes perfect sense in terms of what the beginning of that sutta says, that you cannot have a consciousness without you cannot say anything about a consciousness without the other aggregates. Right? An epithet for nibbana. Because what can be confusing here is people will take this to mean some kind of consciousness, some kind of almost like a soul or self or something that is persisting into nibbana, which is not what the Buddha says. This is the Buddha. All conditioned things, all phenomena are soulless, nothing permanent. So that can be a very confusing and dangerous thing for people. But I like this non-manifesting, an epithet for nibbana. Right? Even this other thing like featureless, invisible, people will say, but it still exists. Right? This is very, very complicated, nuanced, dangerous area for kind of thinking that there's some kind of permanent something, right? Or even like attaching to consciousness as it's consciousness that goes from life to life. But actually, in the Buddha, it's quite clear. I don't remember what sutta, but it's quite clear there is somebody who has the wrong perception that it's the same consciousness that goes from life to life. And this is not the case, because you cannot say anything about consciousness apart from the other five aggregates. This is, when it comes to consciousness, you're going into the deepest of weeds. Really, honestly, I'm saying this as somebody who's tried to study all the different aspects of consciousness and how different Buddhist, teachers translated, and it's a deeply weeded place. It really is. There's just a lot of traps. And that's my message to anybody trying to figure out consciousness. There's a lot of traps, and it's honestly not that worth it. Trying to understand all these little nuances is not necessarily going to help you reach nibbana faster. I'm telling you from my own personal experience, I don't, because it's too. I could spend hours and hours each day intellectually scholarshiping, consciousness. To me, it's not worth the time. So I can see it from my own experience when I get there. Yeah, original mind. See, this is, especially in the Thai forest, there's a couple of these kind of things that can be very dangerously misunderstood. Even like things like the one who knows. I've heard some Thai teachers use that in very dangerous ways. But like Ajahn Chah is very straightforward. He might say something like the one who knows, but he clarifies that this is not some kind of permanent, like he's very clear in what this is. Right? This is why I love Ajahn Chah. Ajahn Chah is the best, in terms of Thai forest for me. Just because of his clarity. And there's no there's no kind of misconstruing what Ajahn Chah is saying. Yeah, I can talk about Ajahn Chah all day, but yeah. Yep, I would say this pretty much exactly. When I read Ajahn Chah, it sounds like the one who knows is really just a highly developed mind with high degrees of right mindfulness. Yep, I think that's a really good way of saying it. Yeah. Ajahn Chah, to me, is the only Thai teacher of the older, I mean, I don't know a lot about younger and Western and different teachers and things like that, but the only Thai teacher that Westerners have contact with that, as far as I have ever seen in all of his teachings that I've listened to dozens of times each, I've never heard him say anything that contradicts the suttas. This is why he's tops for me. You can listen to any Ajahn Chah talk, and if you're like a Sri Lankan sutta person, there's nothing he will ever say that will contradict what you studying the suttas. There's no. As a matter of fact, he'll bring up similes that are so kind of random and deep in the suttas that you'll never hear a teacher talk about them. You have to have read the suttas yourself to see. Oh wait, he's using that simile. Wow. So Ajahn Chah is the best for me. All right. Yes, this is correct. He did know them inside and out. Ajahn Chah knew the dichotomy of what the Buddha says in the suttas. One who both studies and practices is the one who is to be praised the most. Ajahn Chah did a lot of studying in the beginning, and he realized, well, I'm not really putting this into practice. Maybe I should go on Tudong, right? So he had years and years and years of study and then he's like, okay, I need to meditate, and that's really good. So he had all those years of building the foundation in his mind, and then when he went to practice, the foundation was there, the guideposts were there. This is why when I do my sutta retreat, which I'm going to be doing in at the end of September, like understanding the suttas, framework for study and practice, this is what I talk about, right? That if you're just going in and practicing, you have no guide, no framework, no nothing. You have no way to understand what's happening to you. You're not going to get anywhere. You're going to go on all kinds of weeds. You're going to fall in all kinds of traps. It's no good. And if you just study and you don't practice, then you just have all this knowledge in your mind that has no use whatsoever. So you need to have the foundation, the framework for study and practice, understanding the suttas. All right, let's see. Can we please read the four mice? I'm not sure I know what that is, Karuna. I am not sure I know what that is. I'm going to just check the chat. Yeah, Christian, as long as you have the mindset of being very wary for falling into any traps that lead you away from sabbe Dhamma anatta, all phenomena are not self or are not permanent, soulless. As long as you have that foundation, that firm post, delving into things like the consciousness and all that, that's okay. But you have to make sure that you are not falling into any traps of thinking anything is some kind of atta. Remember, all things are anatta. Even nibbana is anatta. That's why sabbe sankhara anicca, sabbe sankhara dukkha, all conditioned things are impermanent, unchanging, or unpermanent, unstable, undependable. All conditioned things are. I got it. Why am I so bright? I don't know why something's going on with my camera. All of a sudden, I'm very bright. Everything's bright. And but so as long as you understand sabbe, that all phenomena, every single thing, even nibbana, is without any kind of permanent essence, then you're okay, right? You're holding on to that fence post, then it's good. I quite love this new webcam that I got. It's an expensive webcam, but it's worth it because I can do things like adjust on the fly. This is so nice. Adjust contrast. See? As a former photographer, these settings are. Always enjoyed playing with settings like this. All right. So let's see. Anguttara Nikaya 4107. Sure, let's read it. Why not? We're already here. Let's see. Numbered. Book of Fours. Third 50. Mice. There we go. Let's share screen. Musica. Mice. Mendicants, there are these 4 kinds of mice. What for? One makes a hole but does not live in it. This is one of... I love the Book of Fours because it contains one of my favorite types of sutta, the 4 kinds of persons. Right? There are many, many 4 kinds of persons. And here we have a 4 kinds of mice. I like it already. One makes a hole and doesn't live in it. One lives in a hole but doesn't make it. One neither makes a hole nor lives in it. And one both makes a hole and lives in it. There are these 4 kinds of mice. In the same way, these 4 people are similar to mice are found in the world. What for? One makes a hole but doesn't live in it. One lives in a hole but doesn't make it. One neither makes a hole nor lives in it. One both makes a hole and lives in it. And how does a person make a hole but not live in it? It's when a person memorizes the teachings, statements, mixed prose and verse, discussion, verses, inspired exclamations, legends, stories of past lives, amazing stories and elaborations. So this is an interesting rabbit hole to go down. This is the 9 kind of, I think, is it a history of mindfulness? One of Bhante Sujato's books, he goes into detail explaining these different things. But this is kind of like the 9 books of the teachings that were memorized. Very similar to like how when the Buddha is talking about the Brahmins, they know philology, etymology, such and such and such. It's kind of similar in that way. It's like the Buddhist version of all the different groupings and chapters, that you see in that thing. So that's what this is, right? Statements, mixed prose and verses, discussions, verses, inspired exclamations, legends, stories of past lives, amazing stories, and elaboration. So these are kind of like the very early groupings and classifications of the teachings. But they don't understand this is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. This is the practice, at least, of the cessation of suffering. That's how a person makes a whole but doesn't live in it. So this is a person who studies but hasn't practiced. Okay? That person is like a mouse that makes a hole but doesn't live in it, I say. So this is interesting. This is like the other sutta that I mentioned, but it has a nice kind of simile to it. I like this sutta. I don't remember this. And how does a person live in a hole but does not make it? It's when a person doesn't memorize the teaching, but they really understand this is suffering. This is okay. So they understand the Four Noble Truths. And how does a person neither make a hole nor live in it? It's when a person doesn't memorize the teaching. So this is a little different, actually. A little different. Doesn't memorize the teaching, nor do they really understand this is suffering. And how does a person both make a whole and live in it? It's when a person memorizes the teaching and they really understand this is suffering. These four people are similar to mice found in the world. So it's similar, but not quite the same as the sutta I'm familiar with. Still a very interesting sutta. I quite like it. All right. So we are at 8 o'clock. I see no other questions. It might be time to do our meditation. I'll give it a minute. See if anything pops up. All right. Well, we did some studying. Why don't we do some practice? So set your body up in a comfortable and stable position. I think most everybody here has done many guided meditations with me, so I think we can do a very light guided meditation today. Spend a little bit of time, a couple of minutes, doing a scan of the body from the feet to the head. Observing the feeling and sensations that are present in the parts of the body as you're moving up. When you're ready, you can take 3 deep breaths and start following the breath as the body's breathing in and out. You can try to observe the feeling of the air going in and out of the nostrils, or the rise and fall of the chest, whatever works best for you. Remember, whenever you're distracted away, acknowledge, let go, and return. Keep coming back to the breath. The breath is always home base. Return every time you're distracted. Remember every once in a while to check in with the state of your mind. Try to observe if the mind is becoming more calm and tranquil, or maybe the opposite. As you do stay with the breath and the mind becomes more calm and tranquil, you will begin to notice more subtle characteristics of the breath. Sometimes the breath is long and deep, sometimes short and shallow. Try to observe the impermanence, the changing, unstable nature of the breath as the body's breathing in and out. Slowly open your eyes, becoming aware of the room around you, your body's position in it. Reflecting on the state of your mind before the meditation to now. And while you do that, I'll bring up the Dhammapada. We'll read some. Then we will close out for the night. The Arahant, or perfected ones. The fever of passion exists not for him who has completed the journey, who was sorrowless and wholly set free, and has broken all ties. The mindful ones exert themselves. They are not attached to any home. Like swans, they abandon the lake. They leave home after home behind. Those who do not accumulate and are wise regarding food, whose object is the void, the unconditioned freedom, their track cannot be traced, like that of birds in the air. He whose cankers are destroyed, who is not attached to food, whose object is the void, the unconditioned freedom, his path cannot be traced, like that of birds in the air. Even the gods hold dear the wise one, whose senses are subdued, like horses well trained by a charioteer, whose pride is destroyed and who is free from all the cankers. There is no more worldly existence for the wise one who, like the earth, resents nothing, who is firm as a high pillar and as pure as a deep pool, free from mud. Calm is his thought, calm his speech, and calm his deeds, who, truly knowing, is wholly freed, perfectly tranquil and wise. The man who is without blind faith, who knows the uncreated, who has severed all links, destroyed all causes, and thrown out all desires, he truly is the most excellent of men. Inspiring indeed is that place where the Arahants dwell, be it a village, a forest, a vale, or a hill. Inspiring are the forests in which worldlings find no pleasure. There the passionless will rejoice, for they seek no sensual pleasures. All right, friends, so let's do our final business and then close out. So if you are watching this video for the first time and you'd like to find out more information and keep updated on all the activities of myself and the organization I'm building, Maggasekha, Student of the Path, then you can go to our headquarters, Maggasekha.org, Maggasekha.org. This is the one-stop shop for all information and updates about myself and Maggasekha. All right. It's interesting. Sometimes it takes a little. There we go. Now we can see. Dukkha patta chane dukkha, bhaya patta chane bhaya, soka patta chane soka, hontu sabbe pipaniyo, etavata cha mehi sampatang punya sampatang, sabbe deva anumodantu, sabba sampatti siddhya, akasata jabumata deva naga mahiddhika punyang tang anumoditva, charang rakantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit of ours that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share this dispensation, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. All right, friends, we have come to the end of another Dhammapalooza. Sukhi Hotu, may you be happy and at ease. Practice well and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again, which could be tomorrow morning for Morning Monastery Experience at 8 a.m. New York time, Monday through Friday, or perhaps Saturday on Insight Timer, 3 p.m. New York time, or Sunday night on the Discord for our weekly community sutta reading, or perhaps next Monday, if I'm alive, for another Dhammapalooza. So, have a good week, friends.